I'm sure you heard of the Wiggles, right? That weird Australian kids show from the 90s. They were a musical group of four, sort of goofy looking guys that would sing kids songs. You know, the kind of show I'm talking about. Anyways, they had this segment where there were these puppet versions of themselves singing, and let me tell you, usually people find puppets scary in hindsight when they look behind on them as adults, but even at the time, children were frightened by them. The only one known to still exist is Jeff the Puppet, which is on display at the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney, Australia. However, one thing that you probably don't know about it are the mysteries revolving around how the puppet was made. Trying to analyze its construction in order to restore it, the museum did several analyses to see what materials were used, and they came to the conclusion that his construction was unlike any other puppet they'd never come across. The material for the face was sort of hard and plastic-like, but when you would touch it, it was almost like rubber to the touch and kind of gave off a similar feeling as skin. The hairs making up the head upon closer examination were actually numerous razor-sharp strands fused together, which accidentally cut several different members of the museum staff during examination. Back when I worked for the museum, I was tasked with reaching out to the seller of the puppet and attempting to track it back to its original owner so he could find out more information about its materials, and I discovered it was owned by the same production company since its inception back in the 90s, ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and after contacting them, some pretty disturbing details were revealed. It took talking to a few different staff members before they could even pin down someone who had any information about the puppet. Eventually, though, they did find someone, an old prop master who had been with the studio for over 40 years. After a brief introduction, the puppet was mentioned, and the woman went silent. A few awkward moments passed, and then she said, "I thought I had been destroyed with the others." I was a bit confused at this point and informed her that this one had been sold to a private collector who had kept it in storage for the last 20 years. The woman didn't say anything until I heard a light whimper coming through the phone. "Whatever you do, do not keep the puppet. Destroy it in any way you can. Do you understand? Never call here again!" Then, the woman abruptly hung up. I was pretty confused at that point about how to proceed. I was definitely freaked out, but I couldn't really destroy the item. I would surely get fired for that. I definitely wasn't going to go near it again, though. I told my manager what happened and she laughed it off, but I still requested to be assigned to another exhibit anyway. In the coming weeks, I tried to push what that woman had said out of my mind entirely, at least until I saw a cleaning lady wiping the glass at the Jeff the Puppet display. It was at a Century of Our Media History room. A pretty cool room, actually. There were different displays and posters from all sorts of movies and shows on the walls, and there was a video that played which guided you through the history of the media all the way from the 1800s. The way they had set the Jeff puppet up made him look even more disturbing than he actually was. There was a bright light on his face, and he was tilted just slightly upwards as he was some kind of royalty or something, which to be praised as crazy as I knew it would sound. I felt inclined to inform the cleaning lady about the doll, so I walked over and whispered to stay away from it, and to just let that one get a little dirty. Her eyes opened wide as she gazed over at me, and realized just how serious I was. Then she nodded, and immediately walked away. After she left, I looked back at the display, and it seemed like the eyes had shifted to be looking at me. Being that close to it really got to me, its bizarre frozen smile, seemingly. He could move at any second. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and one of the monitors above the entrance began to flash with static. Then the infamous clip of the Wiggles puppets pointing their fingers flashed on a screen, followed by that horrifying chipmunk musical track and high-pitched vocals of them singing. I immediately exited the room and found my supervisor in the back office. I asked her about the puppet clip playing in the media history room. She just chuckled, thinking I was playing the joke on her once. She realized, though, that I was legitimately scared. She told me that the Wiggles were just part of that room, not the main attraction, so there shouldn't be any videos of them up on the monitors. When I brought her back to the room, the monitor was already switched back to the historical video that was on when I had first walked in. I went home that night seriously debating quitting my job entirely, even though I love the museum. I started to rationalize to myself that maybe the clip up on the screen was just a part of the historical video that I had noticed before. The thing was pretty long after all, so I continued going to work, but I made sure not to go back in the media room. I would only walk by and look in every now and then as the weeks went on. I noticed that the glass was getting covered with fingerprints on the Jeff display. I was sure that the cleaning lady probably told others about what I had told her, causing nobody to want to clean it. That was when some really dark things started to happen. 3 people had serious medical emergencies in that room in 1 week, and apparently the last thing they had been doing was touching the Jeff display. There were the sounds of someone calling staff member names from down the empty museum hallway, as if trying to lure people into the media room. These events triggered me to continue doing some research on the puppet. It took me a while to find anything, but there was forum posts that I found about the puppet episode on a really old retro TV message board. It was talking about how all the puppets were said to have been given personalities when they were on set, each of them resembling their creators, most hated aspects of their inner personality, and right after Jeff's name in the post was the word vanity. At that point, I immediately knew what I needed to do. When I started work the next day, I went straight to the media room with a bottle of Windex and paper towels and cleaned the fingerprints of the Jeff display. Since then, I made sure it remains the cleanest one there, and I've told others to do the same. There haven't been any issues since then, and sometimes I wonder if the dirty glass really had anything to do with it in the first place. However, I'm not taking any chances, and as soon as I can find another museum job, I'm out of this place.